Hi readers! Today, Meepers and I are going to be going over all of the books that I finished reading last month, March 2021. I had a great reading month. We finished 7 books this month, which was a really great experience. It was a mix of course, fantasy, genre stuff, and then I really got a chance to step outside of my comfort zone last month and read a couple more diverse books, which I'm really excited to talk about. I'm not going to be giving away any spoilers or anything like that, and I'm not going to be talking about these books in any specific order other than how I finished them. I will be putting chapter times in the description box below so that if there's a particular book you want to hear about, you can jump to that section. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump right in with the first book that I finished in March, Thepoppywar by rfkuang. Now, this book was recommended to me by one of my Instagram followers at Laura Booklove, and I will put her link in the description box below. She has such a cute Instagram page. I love her photos that she does with all her little Funko Pops, so it's really cute if you want to check it out. So she recommended this book to me, and it's really funny because when I went to go buy this book at Barnes & Noble, I was looking through the YA section, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and then I finally asked someone, and they directed me to the adult fantasy section. Now, I don't know why I thought this book was YA, I guess because it features younger characters, but this is definitely an adult fantasy. Definitely. It's very, very dark, and the term grimdark is not one that I had actually heard before until I read this book and kind of talked to Laura about it and learned that there is this whole subgenre of fantasy that they call grimdark fantasy. So there's a lot of violence in this book, and okay, so let me give you the setup. We have a young girl named Rin. She's an orphan. She lives in the southern part of her country, Ninkara, which is basically a stand-in for China. Her adopted parents kind of have a drug smuggling trade. They sell opium, and they want to sell Ren off basically to a local man to help their criminal empire. Of course, Ren doesn't want to do that, so she escapes into this big, prestigious military school. And while she's at this military school, of course, she doesn't fit in, because not only is she an orphan, but she's from the south. She has darker skin than everyone. And then she also discovers that she has this crazy superpower, which they call shamanism, that she could basically call the power of a god to her aid. In this case, it's the phoenix. But calling the god is not as cool as it sounds. This particular spirit is very angry, very vengeful, and if Rin's not careful, it will probably destroy her. Again, I love Rin because she's not your typical fantasy protagonist. She is super angry all the time. She often says things that she probably shouldn't. Like, she punches people in the face. She makes the wrong decisions. She takes the wrong paths. But underneath all of her flaws, I did believe that she wanted to do the right thing. So if you are looking for a new adult fantasy book, I would definitely recommend Thepoppywar. Next, I have Me Before You by jojomoyes. Now, full disclosure, I am not a big fantasy reader, but I wanted to give this book a try because it was so hyped up, and I know that there are a lot of people that love this book a lot. So I decided to give it a try, and unfortunately for me, I didn't like it. Like, when I first started reading it, I was getting into it. I thought the writing was really good. It made me want to keep turning the page to find out what was going to happen. But then one of the main characters just started doing a bunch of things that really, really annoyed me. So I couldn't connect with her, and therefore I could not connect with the overall romance of this story. Now, to be fair, there were some things about this character, Louisa, that I did like. I really liked her complicated relationship with her sister. I liked her relationship within her family dynamics. Even her complicated relationship with her boyfriend, Patrick, even that I could relate to and I liked. But then when it came to Will, a trainer, and the main kind of love story here, I just did not like it. So Will, if you're not familiar, has quadriplegia. I hope I'm saying that right. And she just has no idea, like, how to be with him. Like, she says she wants to be with him. She thinks that he needs her. And sure, on some level, you could say that he does. But she gets so much anxiety about the simplest of things. I just don't see how realistically she thinks that she could have a life with him. For example, there is a scene earlier on, this is not like a big spoiler or anything, but basically they go somewhere and she parks in the grass. The man is in a wheelchair and she parks in the grass. I mean, this is just like a simple thing. And there are so many examples of these just not knowing, what to do. And the thing is, like, Will's family has all this money, so there is no reason that she could not get the resources that she needs in order to properly take care of him and help him. But that's not what happens. So the whole thing just came over as completely unrealistic to me, and yeah. Now, I'm fully aware that that is a super unpopular opinion and that a lot of people love this book, so hey, if we all like the same books, then there wouldn't be different genres and so many different options. So I hope that if you do read this, I do hope that you enjoy it, because it's not really fun when you read something that you don't enjoy. Moving on to number 3, we have Artemisfowl and the Arctic Incident. So this is the second book in the Artemisfowl series, and where the first book was kind of like this simple fairy heist movie, now in this one, the stakes are raised in a major way. And the first one was a very small setting. It was mostly at Artemis's family manor house, but now we're out in the world. Now we have the Russian mafia that we're dealing with. Now we have goblins that are uprising and having a rebellion that we're dealing with. Now we have an actual villain that we're dealing with. There's all these things happening that are, bigger and I guess you could say better than the first book. So, and then again, as this book, because it's the second one, we continue to develop Artemis and his relationship with Holly, which is my favorite part of these books, of course. Artemis being this 12-year-old genius who kind of doesn't really have a lot of friends and he's kind of misunderstood. And then we have Holly. She's the only female officer in her peer group, and she is kind of misunderstood as well. So I really like that instead of being on opposite sides, that they decide to work together in this one. I mean, grudgingly at first, but I do feel like by the end of this story that their relationship has gone from, kind of like tolerance to acceptance, which I think is really, really fun. Again, it's a short book, and I've moved on to the third one, so I can't wait to see where this series goes. Number 4, we have Christine by Stephen King. In case you don't know, I am on a journey to read everything that Stephen King has ever written by publication date. So I started with Carrie, the very first book that he ever published, and now I am up to Christine. And again, full disclosure, because the name of this book is also my name, I already went in with a complete bias to absolutely love this book. If you are a fan of Stephen King's writing, then you will definitely like this book, because it's very similar to a lot of his other books. It has a lot of similar themes, lots of innocence. We've got kids and bullies and kids who get picked on, like a lot of those things that you find in all of King's books. And again, like all of King's books, this is a slow burn. Like from the very first page, we know what's going to happen. Anyone who knows Christine, it's a story about an evil car. So in the very first page, when they're like, hey, we see this car on the side of the road, you know what's going to happen. But it's the whole journey to get there that really makes this book exciting, that really makes King's writing exciting. He does such a great job with tension. Like, I know a lot of people just think that his books are, just horror and scary and that's it, but I don't think that at all. Some of them for sure, but this one, it's just such a great job with tension building. Like, you can actually feel it. So by the time you get to the end, it's just like, whew, starts small, gets really large, and as I said in my quick review, only Stephen King can take a story about an evil car and turn it into a masterpiece. Did you like this book, Jack? Jack says that he liked Christine as well, didn't you? You're not too sure about it? Okay. Moving on to the next one, we have One of the Good Ones by Maika and maritzamoulite. Now, this book actually came in one of my Spearcraft book boxes. I believe this was the January Spearcraft book box. Don't quote me on that. I'll put a link above in case you want to watch that unboxing video. But when I unboxed this, I had said that I was going to maybe save it for next year for Black History Month or Women's History Month. But like I do with all new books, I peeked at the first chapter and I started reading it and I did not stop. I was instantly hooked from chapter 1 of this book. So basically the setup is we have 3 sisters, Happy, Kezzy, and Jenny. The middle sister, Kezzy, was a social activist. She had a YouTube channel. She would, do a lot of social activist stuff. And one day she goes to a protest against police brutality and she ends up getting killed. Now, they don't say exactly how Kezzy died, so you kind of assume what happens. But of course, halfway through the book, there is a big twist, and what you think happened is not actually what happened. So I'm not going to say what that is, of course. I would definitely recommend checking it out. So Kezzy has died, and then her 2 sisters are kind of left behind to wonder, all the big questions of life, what it means to be one of the good ones, what it means for their family, etc., etc. Kezzy had planned this road trip through rural America using the Green Book as a guide, and the other sisters decide that they are going to take this road trip in Kezzy's honor. So as they make all these stops along their way, they document their journeys, and I found this book so informational. Every time they made a stop, I was looking on the internet to see if I could find out more information about it. Now, unfortunately, something I found out that's both in the books and anyone that takes a quick Google can see, I think they said 80% of the businesses that were listed in the Green Book are actually no longer in business today, which I found really interesting. So there's not a ton of information out there on a lot of spots. But again, this book has so much history, so much information, so much stuff that I didn't know about. So I felt like this book has part mystery, part drama, tons of history, heart. There's a little bit of everything in this book, and I feel like those are what make the best stories. So if you have not heard of One of the Good Ones, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. It's a super quick read, and I promise once you start it, you will want to find out what happens. Next we have The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abidare. This was another book that was recommended to me by one of my Instagram followers at Kristen's Reading Nook. Again, I will link her handle in the description box below. She has amazing book reviews all the time, and if you want to check out her page, I definitely recommend it. So, The Girl with the Louding Voice is about a young girl who lives in rural Nigeria. She is 14 years old, and all she wants to do is go to school, but her family does not have enough money to send her to school. So, in fact, her family is so poor that her father decides to sell her to a local man so that their family can make some money. But of course, at 14 years old, she doesn't want to be a wife, so she runs away. She runs away to the big city, which has its own set of struggles and problems there. When I first started reading this book, it was definitely a culture shock. Abidare writes in her own voice, so you can literally hear her Nigerian accent in your head while you're reading it. And in the beginning of the book, when the main character, Aduni, when her English is not as good, by the end of the book, her English has gotten better, and so the writing changes to reflect that, which I think is super, super interesting. Now, again, it took me a bit to get into this book in the beginning because it's so different from anything that I've ever read, because I read a lot of fantasy and genre stuff. But by the time we get to the part, which is only a few chapters in, that, Aduni is forced into this marriage, I got totally invested in her story. Throughout the rest of the book, there are so many things that this poor girl has to go through. And some of it is very hard to read. Some of it is not pleasant at all. But through all of these struggles, Aduni never loses her spirit. She never loses her sense of wonder, her sense of wanting to ask questions and know things, and her kindness. She is kind to people that are horrible to her. So I feel like she is the type of character that everyone can learn something from. So I really loved this book. I definitely think, again, it's another one where whenever they presented some fact about Nigeria, I went on the internet to try and Google more. So I love that a lot of the books I read this month inspired me to go seek out more information. Anytime a book can do that, I think that's absolutely amazing. So if you are interested in learning more about life in rural Nigeria and what actually happens there, and in the big cities too, I would say, The Girl with the Louding Voice is a story of hope, it's a story of heart, and it's a story of the importance of finding your voice and making people listen to you. And as it says in here, at the end of the day, no matter what languages we all speak, we can understand each other if we just take the time to listen. And finally, the last book that I finished is the Bane Chronicles. Now, this is a collection of short stories from the Shadowhunter world. Now, this is the newest book that I finished just a few days ago. So, if you don't know me, I am a huge Magnusbane fan. I'm a huge fan of the Shadowhunter world in general, but Magnus is probably one of my favorite characters because he's so funny, he's so sweet, he has this zest for life, he has this big, flamboyant, attitude, but underneath all that, he has a super, super kind heart. So the stories in this are kind of in chronological order. Not 100%, but for the most part, starting in the 1700s up until present day. So we get to see a lot of Magnus's history. For example, throughout the Shadowhunter books, there's a lot of talk about why Magnus is no longer allowed in Peru. And the first story in here is called What Really Happened in Peru. So it kind of goes through things like that. There are mentions of major historical events in history that Magnus was a part of. And then, of course, it talks a lot about people that he's loved, heartaches that he's had, and then what happens when he finally meets Alec, his one true love. I love all the stories of him and Alec together. They're so cute. I can't say this enough. I just love them. They're the most perfect couple ever. But anyway, if you are a fan of the Shadowhunter world, you're probably a fan of Magnusbane, which means you should definitely read this. I will say that it would be good to read at least the Mortal Instruments series and Infernal Devices before reading this, because there are a lot of characters that you might need context for. The Dark Artifices, you don't have to read that one, but Mortal Instruments, Infernal Devices, that will help give you a deeper appreciation of some of the stories that are in this book. So those are all the books that I finished for March 2021. I have 1-minute reviews for all of these books that are either on YouTube, Instagram, or on my website. I will put links for them in the description box below in case you want to check any of those out. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so I know to do more. And if you're not already, please subscribe to my channel. I do new videos every Sunday, Wednesday, and sometimes on Friday. All right, everyone. Happy reading and happy Easter.